Welcome, Bronco Nation, to my review of the Boise State versus Fresno State game. Now, yes, this video is coming out later than I intended for it to, but that doesn't make my reaction, it doesn't make my emotions, it doesn't make what I'm about to say any less real or true. This game, I am still riding the emotional whirlwind, the momentum, the energy that this game has installed into the season, has flipped the story of this season for Boise State from one of a disappointing start to an Andy Avalos era to one that, while it might not be the season that fans had envisioned, to one that gives fans hope for the future moving forward. Andy Avalos now, or Boise State under Andy Avalos, now has 2 wins against top 25 opponents, which is the first time that they've done that since 2018. So 2 wins against top 25 opponents, and the 4 losses that they've had have all been by a total of 23 points. So this is a Boise State team that I have said it all season, that they have just been they've been inches away from flipping the script, from making that step to the next level, and this game proved that. We saw that transition here today. Boise State versus Fresno State. This is the Boise State that we all remember. This is the Boise State that we grew up watching and that we all love. Not that we love Boise State any less when they're losing, but this is the Boise State that we remember, and this was a Boise State dominant performance in all phases. We're going to go through that today: offense, special teams, defense. We're going to look at the 3 keys to the game here, and I'm going to try and make this video not as long as my usual ones, with the Wyoming game coming out on Friday, so I'm going to start working on that video, and with the video coming out a little bit later, I want to try and make it more of a general overview perspective of what this win means for Boise State and what Boise State did in this game to turn that script and to move forward into the next phase, the next section of the future here for Boise State moving forward. So just real quick on why this video is coming out so late, which again I apologize for. Like you all know, I live in Florida. Right now I'm stationed in Florida, so I don't get to go to a lot of Boise State games. Got to go to the UCF game, but I don't get to go to a lot of Boise State games. But my second team, Liberty, was playing up in Oxford, so I drove up for that game. That's one of the reasons my voice, you can hear it, is still a little bit out, because I pretty much screamed my voice out. Another reason the video is coming out late. I had to wait for the voice to recover. But I went up to Liberty versus Ole Miss game. Unfortunate loss there for Liberty. Now both my favorite teams have losses to Ole Miss, so at least there's something that ties them together there. After the game, went out and looked for the Boise State game. Went out, we were still early, tried to get into a bar that had the Boise State game, and nobody had it. Nobody had CBS Sports Network there at SEC Country. Finally found a bar, got them to change one of the channels to Boise State, and Boise State could not have picked a better time to dominate, because here I am, Boise State fan in Oxford, Mississippi, in my Boise State gear. I was wearing this jersey, and they're looking at me like I'm some kind of a unicorn, because they've probably never even seen a Boise State fan in Oxford, Mississippi, because of course when Boise State played them, it was in the neutral site game. So, and these fans are probably watching the first Boise State game since the 2014 game. They probably haven't seen another one. And Boise State couldn't have picked a better time to dominate and better time to get that huge win, because they looked impressive. And after the game, overall, side note here, Ole Miss fans were generally very nice to me. And after the game, many of them were coming up and saying, "Congratulations on the win, go Boise," and saying that they'd probably keep an eye on them the rest of the season there. So hopefully we got a few extra fans there. But that's the reason this video is coming out late. I was up in Oxford, drove home all day yesterday, got home late, and then, working on some other things today and trying to get the voice a little bit of time to recover. So let's jump right into it here. We're going to look at offense, defense, special teams, 3 keys to the game, and then talk about Boise State's potential path to the Mountain West Championship game. All right, so offense. Great performance by the offense, and I'm going to give them an A, solid A here by the offense. Not as consistent as we would have wanted in that first half. A lot of drives ending in field goals, that kind of thing. But Boise State got it done in the end, and they were still going out there. They were going out and they were making those long drives. They were driving between the 20s. They were still being able to punch it into the end zone. Of course, unfortunate interception there on the trick play, which looked like it was going to be great. Just probably needed to, it's Khalil Shakir, a wide receiver, not a quarterback, obviously, so he doesn't know this, but maybe put a little more air on that and a bit of touchdown there by Hopper instead of an interception. So, but overall performance here by the offense was outstanding. 470 yards of total offense, 283 yards passing, which is a great performance by this Boise State team. Not that they've struggled in the passing game, but this is still higher than their season average here for 283 yards passing. But the big number here, the big number that shows that this is a Boise State team that has turned the page, was 187 yards rushing. They have averaged less than 110 yards rushing every game this season. We remember some terrible performances, of course. 20 yards in the UCF game, 43 yards in Nevada, and then less than 70 yards against Oklahoma State. So Boise State has put together some subpar, to say the least, rushing performances this season, but they've started to get better. They've been moving in the right direction. Even in that Nevada game, there was some life in the running game early in that one. Unfortunately, the sack total kind of took away from the total yardage there. But Boise State started to show some life in the running game here towards the end of the season. Offensive line, the fifth or their sixth installment on the offensive line there, has whatever they've been doing there, whatever the tinkering they've done with the offensive line has worked, and the offensive line is starting to give Bachmeier more time, and they're starting to win those battles in the trenches at a higher rate than they were before. But the main reason that Boise State had success in this game is Helani, and specifically in the running game, of course, but overall in this game, he adds an element to this team that is just not there. Boise State, I'm going to go even beyond Helani. Boise State is not Boise State without a dominant running back. Without a dominant running back, they become one-dimensional, and Boise State has never been a team that's one-dimensional. Now, yes, Tim Plow coming, air raid style guy with a lot of potential here, and the air raid, the passing game is going to take the focus in Tim Plow's offense, but Boise State still needs a running back in the backfield that is going to be able to dominate at that next level, elite style of play. Nothing against Cyrus, nothing against Van Buren here, so there's nothing against Habibi Leakey. There's a reason I said Cyrus, Habibi Likio, and there's nothing against Van Buren. I think that they're both running backs that are positive contributors to this offense, but neither of them have that elite running level, that the awareness, the maneuverability, and the top end speed that Helani brings. And we finally saw, for the first time really in 2 seasons, we finally saw a fully healthy, no restrictions, no snap count, finally saw a fully healthy Helani, and it was a difference maker. 117 yards rushing, 5.6 yards per carry, 69 yards receiving on 2 receptions. Just the way that he was running was with power, was with speed. He was breaking through tackles left and right, taking 4 or 5 guys to finally bring him down, cutting left and right across the field. I mean, that amazing reception that was almost a touchdown. So I think it was his second catch on the screen pass there. So that second catch that he had for 40 yards, whatever it was, where he weaved his way, used his blockers. And that's the thing that Helani brings to the table. He's not just trying to outrun the defense there or power his way through. He is looking to see where the blockers are and using his blockers to set up his run. He is running in a way that maneuvers, that forces the defense to come into his blockers and then using that to bounce outside for big runs. I mean, he has that next level. The game is slow for him. That next level thinking that allows him to be such an explosive player at this level. Maybe he's not the biggest guy. He's definitely not the biggest running back that Boise State's ever had, but he has that next level thinking, and he has the agility and the speed, and we saw that today, and he got stronger as the game goes on. With no snap count, he was able to be in there, snap play after play after play, and he's always been a running back that has been able to capitalize on that and move and get better as the game goes forward. So Helani back healthy means that this is a completely different Boise State offense, which we saw today. As articles are saying coming out about this Boise State team, they are a dangerous team now. I think they were still a dangerous team before, because I think that Tim Plow, and like I've said before, kind of beating a dead horse here, but it's not his players. He's coming in and adjusting to this level. We're not seeing 100% of what Tim Plow brings to the table yet, but he is creative enough of an offensive mind that even with a one-dimensional focus and without really the offensive line or running backs providing for a run game, Boise State was still a team that could surprise and be dangerous. But now they are a team that is does not just have that potential, but has it on paper as well, has the facts to back it up. They are a truly dangerous team with Helani back, a completely different team. And that's why we saw a 40-14 domination by this Boise State team. 40 points put up overall was because of the focus on defense, which was obviously not ready for a dominant running game. Focus that it brings on this defense to prepare for that and to come down to start the running game, which opens up multiple big plays over the top. I mean, Boise State had over 8 throws for over 20 yards in this one because the running game was such a factor and forced the defense to not be able to key in on any one thing that Boise State was doing. So let's talk about some other key Boise State player performances here. So we've already talked about Helani. Bachmeier, 15 of 27, so not necessarily a great completion overall, but those big plays, being able to actually push the ball downfield, get those long plays down, which Boise State started developing against Colorado State last week, but which we hadn't really seen all week, not all week, but all season. We haven't really seen those long plays down the field, and Boise State finally brought those to the table, and Tim Plow says he wants to put even more into the offense, which is a great sign that Boise State is starting to establish themselves, starting to get on the same page between the wide receivers and the quarterback, and starting to be able to trust their offensive line that they'll give time for these plays to develop down the field. So the Bachmeier, the big thing here, 283 yards passing, which is great, 1 touchdown, but he didn't do anything besides really one play there on the first drive, third play, where he almost threw an interception. Besides that, he didn't do anything here to compromise the team or to push the ball into a situation that he shouldn't, or to try and take the game on himself and play outside of himself. He didn't do that. He was very methodical. He was very, it looked relaxed out there today, and he would, not today, sorry, Saturday, and he looked like that the game was starting to slow down for him again, which is huge for Boise State, for him to be starting to heat up. And like we saw against Colorado State, I mean, that's what Boise State did in this game. I said that, yeah, it wasn't the prettiest win against Colorado State, but the fact that they were able to fight back proved that this Boise State team had turned a corner and was moving forward. And they showed that in this one. They rode that momentum from the Colorado State game into this, and I think we're going to see a very different Boise State team moving forward the rest of this season. Khalil Shakir, of course, not necessarily the total offensive performance that he saw last game, which was a career performance for him, but is still heavily involved in the offense. 7 receptions, 67 yards, one touchdown. He also had one carry for 15 yards. But the main thing here with Shakir is when he is out there without a snap count like he's had in some other games here, but when he's out there 100% and he is showing himself to be effective, he draws the focus of the defense and he opens up opportunities elsewhere, because you've got to put 2 guys on him, or you have to be aware of where he is, which takes a little bit of that awareness, or if you're putting 2 guys on him, opens up opportunities elsewhere for Boise State's other great wide receivers, like we saw with Octavius Evans with that amazing catch over the defensive back, or Hopper even on that one throw out to the pass, or Habib Likio, or Helani, all these running backs getting involved in the passing game. Even Cutter on a great pass outside on the boundary there on the right side, wide open, made a great run, like 38 yards. So all of those opportunities happen because partially, not necessarily all because, but partially because the defense had to key in on know where that number 1 guy for Boise State offensively is. And that's what we're showing. That's why I'm saying that Boise State is moving forward and turning a page, becoming that dominant team that they always were, that they have been in the past. Because Boise State teams of the past didn't rely on one guy to get the team going or to provide that offensive spark. They always had multiple receivers. They always had multiple playmakers, where from the quarterback to the wide receivers to the running backs. They always had multiple playmakers that were all dangerous, that you all had to account for. And the fact that the running game is there, the fact that Khalil Shakir is back, the fact that the other wide receivers are stepping up, the fact that Bachmeier is settling into himself, all of these things are pointing towards a Boise State team that is looking to come out hot here the rest of this season. And depending on how many of these players they can keep, of course they're going to lose a few of them, maybe a lot of them. But the fact that this coaching staff is being able to develop these players to step up and feel the roles that they were capable of gives a massive amount of faith and hope in the future of this Boise State program, that they're going to get back to being that team that has players across the board that you have to contend with. Shakir, Evans, Helani, Bachmeier, all amazing performances here, and especially, like I said, that catch by Evans on that deep throw over the top of the defender was just an amazing performance. It was an amazing catch. He ended up having 2 receptions for 56 yards, and that big throw was a big part of that. All right, so I've kind of analyzed what I was going to talk about specifically to the player performances here. What I want to talk about here is the things that Boise State started doing in this game offensively, and I've already kind of touched on some of them, but the things that Boise State started doing in this game offensively that I've been calling for all season, and it was kind of like Boise State. This is like a season-long keys to the game performance here, because they hit so many keys that I've brought up all season. Boise State finally started hitting them, which is all part of that offensive resurgence, that offensive renaissance that Boise State has found itself in this season, which shows that Boise State, this is not a one-off performance for this team, that they are riding the momentum and the identity that they found in the last stage of that Colorado State game, riding it into this game, and they're going to be riding it through the rest of the season here, and that they're finally finding out how to use these pieces effectively. The first one here we've already talked about is the running game, effective running game, and it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't just Helani. Van Buren had 2 touchdowns, which is really, and Cyrus also was effective with 11 carries for 38 yards. And my main point on these 2 running backs is that these are not running backs that are built to carry the entire team. But when you have a running back like George Helani out there who is able to provide that dominant bell cow back that you can hand off to every single play if you need to, these other players are able to step into the roles that they work perfectly within. Van Buren, he is a power back. He is a great, when you are down there at the goal line and you've had Helani break off a massive reception or a massive run like we saw today, or we saw Saturday. When you have that happen, Van Buren comes in as a much bigger back, is able to power his way, provide a change of pace there, and force the defense to then adjust to a different package and power his way into the end zone. And that's what we saw today. 2 touchdowns, only 3 carries and 1 yard rushing, but he has 2 touchdowns. And then Cyrus was very effective today in his action as that change of pace back for Boise State, coming in and replacing Helani there after long runs, or just as a change of pace when Helani wasn't necessarily in every single drive. So Helani and Cyrus and Van Buren are 3 great running backs for Boise State that are able to perfectly fulfill each of their roles, and Boise State's running game is finally able to find itself and establish itself with each of these guys finding the part of the offense that they fit into perfectly. Helani is your bell cow back. You want him out there as many times as you can. Cyrus is an amazing change of pace back who doesn't present a significant drop-off, doesn't necessarily have the awareness, I think, that Helani does, and he doesn't necessarily put the game all together, though he has shown the ability to power through. He has shown the ability for that top-end speed, but he doesn't necessarily have the same maneuverability as Helani, and I don't think he has the same awareness, but Boise State doesn't see a significant drop-off with him, and he's had some great performances this year. And then Van Buren is that power back. That's what you want to see out of a true running game that has 3 running backs that can all get the job done, keying off of the performance of a main back here in Helani. Second, getting those tight ends involved, and that's something that Boise State has started working on here. They've restarted it in the beginning of the season, but they've started emphasizing it here mid to late, and Hopper has risen as that main offensive threat. Of course, had an amazing 53-yard touchdown reception last week against Colorado State to aid in that win by the Broncos, and then he had a great catch today. I think he only had 1 catch Saturday for 24 yards. Keep saying today, I'm not used to making these videos on Monday. But he had a great catch. I was thinking it's for 24 yards, but even on that catch, I mean, he plowed through at least 1 defender. I think it took 2 or 3 to get him down. He showed good top-end speed. So this is and he was open on that trick play. So this is a guy who is stepping in, fulfilling that role that Boise State's always had a tight end out there that you want, a Jake Rowe, that they want to be able to throw it out to, and that's going to be a key maker, Schumann, of course, a tight end out there who's going to be a key player on the offense, and not just a guy you want out there blocking, but Hopper is stepping into that role. Of course, Riley Smith is still fulfilling that role. Didn't have any touches in this game, so I hope nothing's going on with him. Probably just didn't work out the offensive scheme today. But the tight ends are starting to get involved, and that's always what Boise State has had, is tight ends that are able to be effective parts of this passing game. So that's part of this. The running game starting to establish themselves. That tight ends being part of it. The focus on Shakir, which is something that Boise State is needing this year. That key player on offense that is able to step up. Boise State, like I said, hasn't always had one player that gets the job done. They've always had multiple guys, but they have usually had one guy that kind of draws the focus, at least, in the post-Kellen Moore era. They've had kind of one one wide receiver that draws the focus, and the other wide receivers are able to work off of that and step up when the defense starts to key in on that one person. Shakir is finally starting to fulfill that role after a really rough patch there mid-season, and then a kind of a slow start to the season dealing with some injuries. And then mixing in other quarterbacks situationally, I'm putting this as a prop for the offense, showing that they're at least attempting it. I don't think it was executed very well, mixing TJ Green in on that I think it was third or fourth drive for Boise State. Now when Boise State put him in on that first play and he busted off a 17-yard run, I thought it was perfect. You change of pace, you get a guy in a situational package. You have a play drawn up for him. He makes a big play. Then take him out, because you're just killing Bachmeier's momentum after he started to try and establish himself. That we saw that with Montel Kozar would always come in, and I thought Montel Kozar played well, but I also think that he was overused to a certain extent and that he killed Brett Rippon's momentum that he had. So I've been calling for Boise State to use their speedy quarterbacks here. Mainly I've been calling for Sears, but TJ Green also has that running ability. I've been calling for them to use these guys situationally, use them in the red zone, use them on some third down packages, so packages that you have as maybe an RPO type of option. Mix those guys in. But I've also said that it takes a coaching staff that is experienced to be able to know when and when not to throw in that situational quarterback. And I think we saw that, that was highlighted or emphasized in this game because the desire is there to use these guys that they have on the roster. They're seeing them in practice. They've seen them in training camp, and they go, man, these guys have skills. They can definitely contribute. We got to find a way to mix them in. And so the desire is there, and I think that desire is good because it's important to use these players situationally and to use all the weapons that you have on your offense. And Boise State is a team that struggled sometimes on some of these short yardage plays. They've struggled in the red zone this season. So I think there are some packages out there that you could get, a more mobile quarterback that might be able to open up some plays for Boise State in these short yardage packages. But you can't just throw them out there when nothing's working. Gets that first play off, it's great. Tries to run him again, doesn't really get anywhere, gets a massive sack. So you kind of saw that situation spin out of control, and then Bachmeier has to come back in and reestablish himself after being on the sideline for an entire drive. So, which we count the offensive drive then by Fresno, he's out for 2 drives, basically. So, that can really, Boise State was lucky that didn't have a detrimental effect, or didn't appear to have a massive detrimental effect on Bachmeier's performance in this one. But I think there is a role for TJ Green. I think there's a role for Sears. He must be hurt. He really has to still be struggling with, and Boise State's not very open about the injury situations here, but we did know in the spring game that, or the spring practices, fall camp. We didn't know that in fall camp he was dealing with an injury that hampered his ability to perform to his top level in that quarterback competition. And I think that has got to still be there because if they're mixing in TJ Green, that shows that they're playmakers that they have on this team. They're trying to get them involved. And they haven't used Sears really at all besides late game performances where he pretty much just handed the ball off. So Sears has got to still be dealing with something. I think that's really the only logical explanation. But the main point here, part of that, Boise State reestablishing themselves on offense and showing hope in the future here for Tim Plow and this offensive unit as they move forward. The idea is good. They just have to execute it better. So running game improvements, getting those tight ends involved, focus on a key player in Shakir that's able to open up the rest of the offense, mixing in other quarterbacks situationally, getting the backs involved in the passing game. 99 out of the 283 yards passing were to running backs. So over a third of the passing yards were to running backs. That's something I've called for all season that Boise State has started to do the last few games, last 3 or 4 games here, has started to push in the running backs. Heavy emphasis on the passing game here. Boise State has some great receiving backs in Cyrus and in Helani here. So they're and we saw that today with just 2 amazing receptions by Helani. If he'd been able to keep his feet on that first one, it would have definitely been a touchdown. So needs to maybe work on that a little bit. But other than that, Boise State has some great receiving backs that are able to make moves in space, and they need to keep using them. And then the final one here is starting to mix in the trick plays, ingenuity, and the misdirection. We saw all of that today. Of course, the trick play didn't end up working out very well for the team, but it was there, just underthrown a little bit, and I like seeing that. I like seeing Boise State. That's kind of been their go-to in past. Kind of established themselves or put themselves in the national spotlight with those trick plays. It's good to keep the defense guessing. You never know if Boise State's going to go to one of those. It's kind of in their history. It's in their lore. It ties Boise State to their past. But overall, the ingenuity and misdirection that Tim Plow is mixing into the offense that we have seen at times, but it's been more sporadic and not consistent, we're now starting to see that on a more regular basis. I mean, there were some amazing plays today. The most impressive, I thought, was it was a pass out to Shakir. I think it was in the second half, and you saw 3 wide receivers on the right side of the field run up, kind of bunch together and do a little bit of a starburst formation where 2 of them split out across the center of the field, and Shakir circled out to the right and was wide open. It was brilliantly drawn up. I think the throw was a little far by Bachmeier out to the right side, so he ended up catching it and going out of bounds, but it was still a big yardage pickup. It was a brilliant play to get their key playmaker here in Shakir wide open. So we're seeing that. We're seeing that ingenuity, that trickeration, you might call it, but really what it is just great drawn up play designs that shows that misdirection, that gets the defense on their, not just on their heels, but having no idea what they're supposed to be looking at. And with the Boise State team that doesn't necessarily have the top elite level players at every single position, recruiting has taken a little bit of a hit the last few years. The way you make up for that is creative play calling, and Tim Plow brings that to the table. We saw that against Colorado State in the second half, and or definitely all game, but especially in the second half, and we're definitely seeing it today or Saturday versus Fresno State. And I think that is the Tim Plow offense that we're going to see established here once he gets to the level where he is able to show a little bit more confidence, where he's able to judge things a little bit better with that experience, and definitely get the players in that fit best into his offense. The future is incredibly bright for this Boise State offensive unit. Okay, so that took a little bit longer than I wanted to on the offense, so we're going to get kind of quickly through the last 2 sections. All right, defense, A+ performance. A+, solid A+ performance. The offense took a while there to get going, 16 points there in the first half before a really, really good performance there in the second half. I think they had 3 touchdowns there in the second half. So really great performance there in the second half. But the defense was dominant and consistent throughout. Held Jake Haener to 22 out of 38 22 out of 38 completions for 279 yards passing. That's only a 57.9% completion average. This is a quarterback that averages over 66% completion on the season. They also forced him, he got 2 touchdowns off, but they forced him into 3 interceptions, and that was the difference in this game. He had only 6 interceptions coming into this one, 4 of them in one game versus Oregon. So this is a quarterback that is incredibly accurate, that makes the right decisions. I think he's an NFL caliber quarterback. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks I've seen at Fresno State really since Derek Carr. So he is that type of level quarterback, I think, for Fresno State. And Boise State forced him into these mistakes. It was an incredible performance here by the defense, a great bend but don't break, which we saw last week, and we saw it even against Colorado State time after time after time. Fresno State was able to drive, I wouldn't even say consistently, because Boise State's defense actually stopped them a ton of times. They had 7 drives that ended in 4 plays or less for Fresno State. So they weren't able to drive consistently, but when Fresno State was able to drive, was able to get some big plays off, they ended up short. They ended up they ended up with punts, or they ended up with turnovers or whatnot. They didn't end the way that Fresno State had designed, was hoping for, and obviously Boise State gave up some big plays, but they were able to make the stop when it mattered and come up key, specifically on Boise State's side of the field. So many big stops. Started off the game with a huge stop on that 4th down. The first drive for Fresno State, it looked like it would be an easy 4th down pickup, and the Skinner came from nowhere and just absolutely demolished the running back on that outside run. So an outstanding performance by this defense overall. 3 interceptions. Both Kaniho brothers getting picks on similar plays, actually breaking on the route. And then Skinner with just I think it was the most impressive interception of the game, because it was a deep ball into the end zone. Not a lot of room there at the back corner of the end zone. It was a terrible decision to throw that ball by Haener because the wide receiver was not open. There were 4 or 5 defenders out there for Boise State. But he turned his head around once the ball was already in the air. He knew the ball was coming because the wide receiver was running out of room. So he had that head on the swivel. He had that awareness to look up. And the ball, he had only a couple seconds there before the ball got to him, and it was already en route. So that is a hard reception for anybody, especially especially, a wide receiver, that'd be a hard catch, but especially for a safety. I mean, these guys are on defense. They say that these guys, the defenders play defense for a reason. It's usually because they can't catch, which has not necessarily been the case for this Boise State defense. But Skinner hasn't had a pick all year, and he turns his head around just the right moments, tracks the ball down, and then catches it and secures it before going out of bounds the last couple feet there in the end zone. It was an amazing interception, one of the most impressive, I think, of the season. And this is, like I said, Skinner has been the dominant presence for this defense. He's been the big hit guy, to his detriment because of all the targeting that's gotten called. But he's been that big hit guy for Boise State, but he hasn't necessarily been the finesse guy. And that was a finesse interception. That was an incredible job by Skinner. So 2 interceptions here by both the Cornell brothers, and then a big interception there by Skinner. So that's, passing game there. Boise State, 279 yards, some big plays that they allowed, but they didn't allow any, besides really one touchdown pass there. They didn't allow any two touchdown passes there, but they didn't allow anything to break them defensively here. And this is a quarterback that is incredibly accurate, that throws his balls on frozen ropes with great wide receivers. And it's a defense that's been a little beat up. They got some guys back. Caleb Biggers was back out there today, but it was a defense that stepped up big, forced the interceptions, and was able to capitalize off of the pressure that the defensive line was putting on to stay on their receivers long enough to force some bad throws here and some big mistakes by Haener. An outstanding job by the defensive secondary here. But the big story here, I think, the big story is 77 yards rushing allowed by the defense. Only 77 yards rushing. And this is a Fresno State team that, the passing game is their primary focus. They do average over 136 yards rushing per game. And it is a Boise State defense that has struggled against the run game mightily pretty much all season. There's been a couple games where they've kind of stepped up, but pretty much all year, exception of last week. I thought they played pretty well against the run game last week. But pretty much all year, besides the Colorado State game and today, Boise State has struggled against the run game, and that is no secret. But today, they had 5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, and the Boise State and the Fresno State running backs were able to get nowhere against this Boise State defense. It was truly a remarkable performance here by the Boise State defensive line. The defensive line, which has been one of the weaker parts of this Boise State team. But they, like I said, 5 sacks by this defensive line, putting pressure. Even when they didn't get sacks, they were still putting pressure on Haener. He truly didn't have complete time in the pocket, or never really had any moments where he had a ton of time in the pocket. So they were getting consistently through the quarterback. I think a lot of it was the play calling. But Boise State started out hot. They've been a defense that has played great in the second half and made great adjustments. But this was a defense that finally started out hot, and that's how you get a dominant win, is when you stay on the you start out pedal to the metal and you stay that way the entire time, specifically on defense, of course, team overall, but specifically on defense. If you are able to dominate from kickoff to final whistle, you are going to see a lot of wins on your schedule. I think that's what Boise State is looking at going forward here, because their defense, not just their offense, but their defense has looked like they have turned a page towards finally getting back to that thing that Boise State has always hung their hat on, has been their defense, and it looks like they finally found a way to capitalize on the playmakers that they have in this defense and the play calling here to get those players into the backfield here against Haener, to force those interceptions and to stop the running game. Just an amazing performance by the defense overall in this one. Key players to highlight, like we already talked about, the Cornell brothers, but specifically here, the true freshman, man, I always mess up these names, but Kanohi Kaniho led the team in tackling, 7 tackles, 1 pass defended, and of course that incredible interception there in the second half. And then Wimpy, he wasn't statistically at the top necessarily, though he was in the top third for tacklers in this game, but he had a massive sack in this one, absolutely massive sack. And then Skinner, no targeting, that's the first thing here, no targeting called on him today, which is always a huge win, but he still found a way to go out there and make those big hits without getting the targeting calls called on him today. So great job of stepping up by Skinner and playing smarter, which is something I called for last game, was for Skinner to start playing a little smarter in these games, still bring that naked aggression, that wild energy that he has, but obviously, and still deliver the dominant blow, but just be a little smarter about how you do it, and we saw that today. But it wasn't just Skinner delivering big hits. I mean, like I said, Wimpy had a big sack. Jones had some massive hits. Biggers had a big hit. Players across the board are showing that Skinner's not the only guy that can go out and smack people. Boise State's defense has shown that all year, but we really saw that today because we didn't just see a big play defense, because that's what Boise State's been. They've been a big play defense. They've been the players that have survived by getting the turnovers, by forcing those fumbles, getting those interceptions, by getting sacks in the backfield, though not on a consistent basis, but going out and getting those massive tackles for loss in key moments. That's how Boise State has survived, but they haven't been consistent overall. Teams have still been able to put up a lot of yards and in some cases a lot of points against this defense. But today we saw the big play elements in the turnovers with the interceptions and the sacks, but we also saw the consistency, which is something that Boise State lacked all of last season and has lacked pretty much up to this point all year. But against, I think, honestly, the best, if not, or at least one of the best offenses that they've faced all year, they've delivered a dominant performance, proving that they're capable of it, but also I think proving that they've turned a page towards establishing themselves as not just a team that relies on a couple of key players to make some exciting plays, but a defense that is able to create a team defense and trust the entire unit to go out and perform in their specific part of the field and their specific assignment and go out and perform dominantly, and that's what we saw today. Defense, A+ performance. Special teams, all right, A for the offense, A+ for the defense. For the first time this season, we have A's across the board. Ding, 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 ding. I don't know. I just felt like the right moment to get that sound effect out there. But like the lottery. When you're in Vegas or something. Anyhow, A's across the board. A's for offense, A+ for defense, and a solid A here for the special teams. Yeah, no massive returns but they also didn't allow any massive returns. But the reason they get solid A's here is the kicking game. The kicking game was on point and is one of the main reasons that Boise State was able to get off to a lead and win this game. Dalmez, he is I know that he's said that his goal is to be the best kicker in Boise State history. And young man, I'm not that much older than he is, so I can't really say that. But anyhow, he's doing it. He is absolutely on track to be the best kicker in Boise State history, and I think he already is. I mean, he still has 3 or 4 years of eligibility, so he still has many years of great kicking performances to climb those statistical rankings and become officially in the record books the best kicker in Boise State history. But in my opinion, right now, based on what he's already put up and based on his performance, not just in this game, but in all the games that he's played in, he is showing that athletically and talent-wise, he is, in my opinion, the best kicker in Boise State history. 4 out of 4, long of 47. It is, what a relief as a Boise State fan to finally have a kicker, and we've had 2 great ones back-to-back, but to finally have a kicking game that you can sit back when the kicking unit comes out, relax, and know that you're going to end up with points. I mean, I can't remember a time, even when we had great kickers in the past, they still weren't necessarily consistent every single game, with some exceptions. Rasa was pretty good. He was good. Rasa was good. But Boise State struggled to get good kickers that are going to be consistent every single game. But Sachs last season, then Dalmas this season, back-to-back steals for Boise State in the kicking unit to just have kickers that if the offense isn't able to get into the end zone, which they've struggled with, you have points guaranteed. You can take a breath. And it allows, what it allows for the offense? It allows the offense to be more aggressive because they know, on that going from the 30 on that third and long play or going from 25 to 30 on that third and long play, if they don't pick up all the yards or if they don't pick up the first down, they have points already guaranteed. So they can be a little bit more aggressive in most situations. They can maybe go for the end zone. They don't have this pressure to necessarily go out there and pick up the first down right then and there because they know they got 3 points guaranteed, and that's what Dalmas brings to the table. I mean, he is 19 of 21 this season, which is amazing statistic. It's over 90% kicking, 97% kicking percentage. But he, on his entire career so far in 2 seasons, he is 26 out of 29. So 26, he's only missed 3 field goals in his entire career. This is a kicker that is an elite level player for Boise State. I think he's a guy that has NFL potential. I mean, it's hard to make it in the leagues as a kicker, but I think he absolutely has that NFL potential, and he's going to be coming up on his junior or senior year here towards the end of his career, looking back on a long legacy, a long history of success, and on those awards watch lists. This is that kind of kicker that Boise State has in their possession here. So that's part of the reason that Boise State gets the A here. 4 out of 4, long of 47. Solid, again, kicking performance by Damas. And then the punting unit here. Vasquez, a little bit of an up and down performance last week. You know, some great kicks, some 50-yarders, and then some really terrible kicks, some shanks. But overall performance in this game was excellent. Averaged over 49 yards per kick. He had 3 kicks, averaged over 49 yards per kick, and a long of 53. So outstanding performance by the special teams unit. Definitely deserves an A. A for offense, A for special teams, and A for the defense. All right, let's talk about real quick here 3 keys of the game. So I'm pushing longer than I thought I would on this video. So first here, pull out all the stops offensively. We've already talked about it. A+, absolute A+. We got the deep ball finally going, being consistent. Like I said, 8 plays over 20 yards. That deep ball was definitely a threat and a factor. The run game finally picked up. But the most important factor, and the reason that I think that the deep ball was a factor in this offensive system, was because of the play calling. The play calling was very, very innovative. It kept Fresno State on their heels. Of course, the running game did that, but having Helani back, that was a key element. But I think that Tim Plow is starting to come into his own here. He's adapted to this FBS level, which is a big step up from the FCS. Don't let anyone ever tell you it's not. It is a completely different ball game. He is starting to adapt to this level of collegiate football play, and he is starting to figure out what his playmakers can give him and what he needs to do to be consistent as a play caller, and not just consistent, but to bring that innovation that he has, that incredible offensive mind, and apply that throughout the entire game. So outstanding job, A+ by pull out all the stops offensively. 2, no snap counts, key players. Helani, 100%. I don't think there were any other players, or at least it wasn't verbalized, that they were on limited snap counts. Whoever was out there was playing, was giving 110% and beyond what they were able to perform. So what they were able to bring to the table. So that A+ on that one. And then put pressure on Haener. Take a little bit longer on this key right here. 5 sacks. Constant blitzers thrown at Haener. I mean, it wasn't necessarily they're bringing house on every single play, but there were constant blitzers coming at Haener. And not just that, but the defensive line was actually winning their battles in the trenches. So even though Boise State was bringing blitzers here and that helped, the defensive line was getting through themselves. I mean, Boise State, Washington, Cravens, Matlock, all those guys, Obucherry, all those guys, that's 4 out of Boise State's 5 sacks there from defensive line players, able to get through and win their battles and get to the quarterback here. That's something that Boise State's not really done this season. They've shown, especially in the second half, they've been pretty good at stopping the run game in the second half, or at least making those adaptions for the most part. But they definitely not been able to stop the run game in the first half, and even throughout the whole game, they haven't been able to make the corrections needed to go and get to the quarterback on a consistent basis. But they finally did it today throughout the entire game. Was dominant in the first and second half against the run game, and was getting to Haener on a regular basis and forcing him to have a very down game. I think, part of it was, I think that Haener was playing in front of a large crowd at home stadium. I think that Fresno State might have psyched their own quarterback out a little bit by creating that environment that, if you're not used to playing that as a player, that's going to be a difference maker in how you approach the game and how you actually play out there on the field. So I think that was part of it. But the biggest reason that the Fresno State struggled in this one was because Boise State did not allow the quarterback to establish himself in a rhythm and to get time to make the plays that he's capable of. And that's because of the pass rush that Boise State was able to bring in this one. It was the most sacks all year on Haener. He'd only been sacked 14 times in the season. In the entire season, he'd only been sacked 14 times, and 4 of those came in the Oregon loss. So I said earlier that he'd thrown 4 picks in the Oregon loss. I don't think that's right. I meant to say he had 4 sacks in the Oregon loss. Anyhow, so 14 times in the season, 4 of those came in the Oregon loss. So you take the Oregon game out, he's only been sacked 10 times. And Boise State got him 5 times today. So this is a good Fresno State offensive line. It's a good quarterback who's usually able to get the play off quickly. So that was another factor. Boise State's defenders were staying on their wide receivers, and he didn't have a lot of options to go, a lot of places to go with the ball quickly, and it forced him to hold on to it. leading to sacks. But that pressure was significant in this one, and it was a different performance than Fresno State usually sees out of their offensive line, and it was a different performance than Boise State usually sees out of their defensive line. And that is what makes me think that this is a Boise State team that can go undefeated the rest of the season, because they're not, I mean, offense is always going to have up and down games, but if your defense can be consistent and play like they did today, that is going to win you a lot of football games. But yeah, 3 3 Here's where the 4 picks came in. He had 4 interceptions against Hawaii. So 3 picks today. The last time that Fresno State lost, also had 3 or plus picks, 4 interceptions against Hawaii. That was the difference maker in this one. Fresno State basically losing out on at least 3 opportunities to go down and score, and definitely on that picked by Skinner, that was a chance that Fresno State looked like they were going to be able to drive down, potentially score on that one. Had put together some good plays prior to that. So the interceptions by this defensive unit, which I think, again, plays off of the pressure by the defensive line, and by the blitzing packages, allowed Boise State to get the win. So yeah, like I said, Washington, Wimpy, Cravens, Matlock all got tackles. Matlock is now the leading all got sacks. Matlock is now the leading sack king on this Boise State defense, took over Banya, who had previously, he and Banya were tied at 6. So Banya really not necessarily a key presence in this game as far as statistically, but I definitely saw him out there making big plays and getting involved. Just wasn't able to necessarily be the one finishing on those plays. But yeah, Matlock takes over Banya, becomes the leading tackler here with 7 leading sack leader here with 7 sacks by Matlock. And then the cherry on this performance was the Obucherry sack that led to Boise State's final touchdown of the game, but ended any conceivable chance. I mean, I think the game was already out of reach at that point, but ended any conceivable chance of Fresno State being able to get back in this one in any way, or at least make it look less of a disappointing loss here, getting that sack on that 4th down attempt conversion. Amazing performance by Boise State overall, like I've said over and over again during this video. So, can Boise State go out and win the Mountain West? I think that is a strong possibility. You're looking at a Boise State team that's got to play Wyoming on Friday, and then they have to play New Mexico, and then San Diego State. I think that's their last 3 games. So, if they play this way, the team that I'm most worried about, and I'll do my video for the Wyoming game, but the team I'm most worried about, obviously, is that San Diego State team. That Wyoming game is not going to be easy. That's been a team that's had Boise State's number in the past, and even New Mexico has been able to get a surprise win. They did lose to UNLV this week, gave UNLV their first win, so that doesn't bode well for the Lobos. But it's you can't count on anybody in the Mountain West. But if Boise State plays the way they did today, which I think that they will, and that I think that they are showing that this isn't a one-off game. I think that they have turned a corner, and they are starting to show what Andy Avalos. I said that Andy Avalos was the guy to get Boise State back to being that dominant team of past years, the team that gets into the top 10, the team that is in competition, that is in the conversation for being a national championship team. That's what Boise State teams were of past season, of the distant past now, 2009 era. But the Boise State teams of those past years, they were dominant throughout. They had good special teams. Let's not talk about the Nevada loss, but outside from that, good special teams. They had dominant defenses with not relying on one key player, but playmakers across the board. And they had offenses that were innovative, that brought things to the table, that announcers and announcers and fans and defending coaches and defensive players had never seen before, and they were able to get in all phases, running and passing, were able to bring to the table a dominant offensive, defensive, and special teams performance. That's what Boise State teams of the past were able to do. And not just be able to do that consistently, but to get the big plays, to get the turnovers, to play with energy, and to play with violence there on the defensive side. That's what Boise State teams have done in the past. That's what Andy Avalos helped create when he was a player, and that's what he's helping to create now as a coach. We're seeing a completely different mentality out of this Boise State team this season that I think as we saw it come together So they always had the potential and were trying to establish themselves, and his coaching staff was trying to figure things out and get themselves set, and even then was coming close in a lot of these losses. They have now, I think, gotten to a point where they are establishing themselves, where the defense and the offense, but particularly the defense, is working out what it needs to do to get off to quick starts, and the offense is finding out what it needs to be a balanced attack, a balanced offensive attack across the board. We're seeing that come together, and I think we're going to see that going for the rest of the season. So Boise State, I think, has a very good chance of going the rest of the season here undefeated. And now, right now, they don't control their destiny for the Mountain West Championship, but Air Force still has to play Colorado State and Nevada as their two biggest threats to lose, and they have to play at both of them, and they're not favored in the Nevada game. Nevada's getting a 68.5% chance of winning. Colorado State's been tough in the past there for Air Force as well. So they play at both teams, and Nevada, it looks very, very threatening for these Falcons. Utah State has to play at San Jose State, and they have to play Wyoming. San Jose State is favored by 4.5 points next week by Vegas. So both of those teams, as long as Air Force and Utah State lose at least one game and Boise State goes undefeated, which I think there's a good chance all around for all of that to happen, Boise State, despite getting off to a 4-4 start or 3-4 at 1 point start, losing 4 games, including 2 Mountain West games, somehow has a chance here, and a good chance, I think, to get in that Mountain West Championship game, to win that Mountain West Championship game. So, to get to 9 wins there, and then to potentially get to a 10-win season with a win in the bowl game potentially there for Boise State. So this is a Boise State team that, if they can do all of those things, even if they can't do all those things, I think it's still a successful start of the Andy Avalos era, and just the way that they have corrected the deficiencies and put Boise State back on the right track and gotten the big wins. I mean, if you told me that Boise State was going to beat Fresno State and BYU in the Andy Avalos era, I would have told you it was going to be one of the most successful starts of a coaching career ever. So obviously, there's been some other things happen that have kind of derailed that a little bit, but Boise State's gotten the important wins, the wins that matter the most here, with wins against their main rivals on the biggest stages. They played up to the competition, and they've been close in all the rest of them. If they can finish this with a Mountain West Championship game, Mountain West Championship win, is going to be a huge start to this Andy Avalos era, and the future already looks bright, but that would be a great way of just absolutely setting the stage and letting everybody know that Boise State is back. I think they definitely are moving that direction, and I think that they are back after this win against Fresno State. So thank you for watching my video. Make sure you like and subscribe. Apologize for the delay in it coming out, and I apologize for the length. But there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of things to look forward to here as a Boise State fan. And after a big win like this, there's a lot to talk about and what this means for this program moving forward. So thank you for watching this video. Make sure you like and subscribe. And as always, go Big Blue!